Lars is captured and taken by ship to Estonian lands. The Estonians are a Baltic Finno-Ugric people related to the Livonians and the Wends and are known as either mainlanders or islanders. The Oeselians were the most difficult for the Christians to conquer. In the 13th century, Valdemar II of Denmark, the Swedish army and the Bishop of Riga, with the Livonian Brothers of the Sword, made several attempts to conquer them. The Oeselians' ability to resist the Crusaders may have been due to their military organization, the geographic placement of Oesel, or possibly bravery based on their belief in the protection and might of pagan gods. The names of various gods and deities live on in Estonian folklore to this day. An ancient myth says that the world spun around an eternal tree to which the sky was nailed with stars. The Milky Way, or as the Estonians say, the Bird's Way, was a branch of this tree along which birds carried the souls of the dead into other worlds. Similar animistic myths about the structure of the world are found in other Finno-Ugric cultures, all the way to Lapland. The ancient chronicles contain references to the Estonian supreme god Tarapita, who flew over the sea and landed on Oesel.
Unlike my less fortunate companions, the Osilian raiders did not kill me. I think the death of my father's friend was also an unfortunate accident, as the scoundrels would have received a much higher ransom for 2 Danish men. Once a well-respected, honorable merchant, I had now become a slave. We were treated almost like cattle. We were not treated poorly, though the food could have been better. I spent several years in slavery and abandoned any hope that my family would ever buy me out of this humiliating servitude. Other prisoners who had already spent some time in captivity, told me that slaves who did their work well could even be promoted to overseer of the household. So I did the best I could. I learned the local language while working for an Oselian blacksmith near Tuju, where locals mined ore and smelted it into iron. I never thought about where and how iron was obtained when I traded blades. The digging and smelting of swamp ore on Oesel was some of the hardest work I had ever done. Sometimes the furnace we had built just outside the forest had to be pumped with bellows for several days before the iron bits separated from the ore. It was easier in the smithy, where all I did was bring firewood and water, keep the fire going in the forge, pump bellows for several hours, and help the blacksmith in various other ways. In time, I came to love the blacksmith, and he became almost like a father to me, or perhaps even a mother. The blacksmith was also well respected and held high esteem in the village. No wonder. The horses were always shoed, and women adorned themselves with bronze jewelry and sewed clothes with needles. Yet, my master's most highly esteemed skill was that of forging weapons, for an Oselian's life was unimaginable without a blood-stained sword in his hand.
Written sources describe Estonians from Oesel as the most wicked enemies of the Christianity. The Chronicle of Henry of Livonia describes a cruel incident. Estonians ripped out the heart of a Christian castle overseer. They cooked it over a fire, divided it amongst themselves, and ate it so that they would become courageous against Christians. His flesh they fed to the dogs and to the birds of the sky. We will never know whether this really happened or was it written to scare with the wickedness of the pagans.
In the animal world, the weaker exist only as food for the stronger. The pagans thought in much the same way. The raiders considered the settlements of other tribes as places to be plundered for captives, cattle, weapons, and other goods. If they did not do so, someone else would. I was brought along on raids as an interpreter to negotiate ransoms with the captives' relatives. This was not easy, as I saw the grief and suffering we caused. But I had learned a simple truth in my time with the pagans. If you run with the wolves, you must howl with them. As soon as the ice retreated from the sea, the Oselians went raiding. They often joined forces with their neighbors, the curonians. Returning from one of our raids, we docked on the curonian shore to divide the booty. I had begun to feel like I belonged with the Oeselians, but I was sold like a simple animal.